Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the experience, decision that shape who we have become. Our today's guest is Dr. David Marcos, a clinical psychologist with over 40 years of experience helping family navigate stress, conflicts, and emotional communication. He's the founder of our ParentRx, where he provides practical tools and strategy to help parents build stronger, healthier relationship with their children. In a world where parenting has become more complex, shaped by social media, financial pressure, and constant digital distraction, the Marcos focus on happy family, develop a clear emotional language, becoming a soothing present for one another, create home where children feel safe and understood. It's a really pleasure and honor to have you on the show, Dr. Marcos.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So, Dr. Marcos, can you take us back to the beginning? What led you into working with family and parent-child relationship?
Well, in my own personal family, there was not much emotional communication at all. So we were kind of left to our own devices, which was not the best idea when you're a little child because little children experience things newly and usually very intensely. So you need somebody to be able to talk with about some of these things. So when I got interested in psychology, which is kind of ironic, I was more interested in research at first, not the clinical end of psychology. And I did research and, put out a paper and everything like this on neuroendocrinology, as it turns out. But anyway, I decided the lab was too impersonal for me and I went into clinical work.
Yeah.
And that's where I sort of found myself. I realized that children in high stress situations, high conflict families, for instance, they really needed an advocate. And they really needed somebody, not only with the court, but with their parents. You know what I mean? You're just not doing it the way that it's helpful to your children. And so I started working with families like that. And
Yeah.
40 years later, here I am talking with you. So, yeah.
Amazing. This is lovely. The fact that, you actually were like, saw how difficult it was being a child and those things was not there. And now you actually more like, be more like a solution as a bridge to help family do better. This is really amazing. What pattern have you consistently seen in families struggling with
Well,
communication?
when people come to see me, they're not coming to see me first. All right. They talk to their relatives, their friends. They might even talk to their bartender. What do I do because this situation is not working? Either they're not getting along with their partner or their kids are acting out, behaviorally. So they finally come to somebody like me who's a resource for this type of thing. And by that time, there's a lot of chaos in the family, you know? And so the first thing to do is to try to figure out what's causing it. And mostly what I found out is that these people just do not know how to communicate well. They just don't know how to communicate. So everything gets blown out of proportion. There's always tension. The children pick that up and they begin to react to it. And then, so when I get involved with the family, I see the entire family. I don't just see the children or just the adults, because what I need to do is what I call access the children's emotional perceptions and the adults' perceptions of each other.
Yeah.
And then I can guide the parents on what their children really need from them emotionally to help them to develop into healthy, emotional young people.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for with the work you do. So many many parents rely on how they were raised. When did you realize that traditional parenting approach was no longer enough for today's world?
Well, of course, the pressures are different in today's world than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, I'll tell you also, I'll get into the clinical things that I also noticed, but environmentally, two-income families, so nobody has time to attend to their kids. There's no personal space because of computers and cell phones. I mean, it used to be in the old days, dad would come home from the office or mom would come home from the office and they'd leave their work at the office.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, with computers and cell phones and, you always got deadlines and job security isn't what it used to be. Financial pressures, and if the parents don't agree on parenting styles, that's another problem. So those are kind of the new things. Social media is really tough on kids because of cyberbullying and many other things. Okay, so, there's a lot different now than it used to be. Clinically, the question is really very in depth, to tell you the truth, because what impacts our reactions to each other, to our children, there's a number of sources of that, and only a couple of them are obvious. Okay, The obvious is the situation at hand. You're having a conflict with somebody, you get mad, or, then you try to argue it out. But what actually causes our reactions is deeper than that, right? It's not just what's going on right now. So I'm going to introduce a couple of things to your listening audience. They're based on self-psychology, okay, which is a variant of psychoanalysis, 70s through the 90s, okay? It was part of my training, and I found it very valuable. There are certain experiences, for instance, that are called self-experiences. Now, what does that mean? There are certain experiences that we always remember. We sometimes don't even understand why that particular experience is sort of stuck in our memory, but it is. But the reason it's stuck there, somehow it affects how we perceive ourselves in our world. We react to that, okay? Now, there's some obvious ones, like, you're a young child, you go through a divorce of your parents, and that really has an impact on you, and that's one of your self-experiences. But there's a lot more subtle ones than that, all right? And I try to help people become aware of those self-experiences, because oftentimes that they're not even thinking about it when they react, because they've been in there for so long. Sometimes they never did describe it, and so there's no words for them, and we have to find the words for them. So this is the more in-depth part of
Yeah.
the work. Another process that happens that affects our reactions strongly is a process called internalization. Now, what does that mean? Internalization is almost like subliminal learning. It's reactions that get into us below our level of awareness. Okay? They're internalized. And one of the things that parents need to realize is one of the things that their children internalize from them is how to react to stress. We model how to react to stress, and it gets in there. So, for instance, if your parents are always arguing and never can come to any sort of resolution, that's how they react to stress. And chances are, when that child grows up, they're going to find somebody just like that and going to repeat the pattern, all right? Because they're used to it. You see what I'm saying? A good example is children who are abused. Now, when they grow up, they'll swear in
Yeah.
all sincerity that they would never do to their children what happened to them. But in moments of intense stress, and
Yeah.
children are really good at that. They're really good at all of a sudden giving you
Yeah.
unexpected stress. They regress, and regress is bad. They go back to old ways of dealing with things, which is basically these internalized responses. And so they may hit again, they may aggress again, and that gets passed down. This is why families that abuse can run in family generations. You see?
Yeah. Amazing.
You have to be aware of those things.
Internalization. You just speak a whole lot of volumes. See the part that, yeah, just when you make reference of internalization, the part that our children could actually pick a whole lot of our common emotional language, which may not be visible.
Well, that's a big topic. And as you know, when I sent you the topics to cover in this broadcast here. Okay, first things first. I talk about the concept of being a soothing presence. And I have to describe that first, because without that, you're not going to be able to develop the emotional image and all the other things that we're talking about. Okay. What is a soothing presence? Well, in its simplest form, a soothing presence is somebody who's okay when we're not okay. If you think about the people that you may turn to, for instance, when you're upset or have something intense going on, we pick certain people, friends or family, and invariably they're people who are okay when we're not, all right? They're soothing, right? And so what that does is, as you speak about what's going on inside you intensely, not only are you getting it off your chest, but you're getting what I call a safe emotional distance from it. Now you can begin to look at it more objectively, because it's not all stuck in here. It's sort of out here between you and this other person who's a soothing presence. And now you can both kind of look at it and say, okay, this is really hard. What can we do about it? It's called a merger, you and the soothing presence. Now, this is something children need, absolutely. All right. And we can describe how it's different between being a soothing presence for an adult versus a child. Okay. But let me explain to your audience also that I'm using the term a soothing presence rather than a soothing person. And the reason for that is this: you can't become a soothing presence for anybody if you're all upset yourself. You have to have a soothing environment. If you got a deadline tomorrow and, you don't have time, and all you're doing is putting out the next fire at work, you don't have the presence of mind to be a soothing presence. So often I talk to families about lifestyle, talk to the parents about lifestyle, because, you're under too much stress, and the stress is translating into into your kids, and that's why you're coming to see me. To become a soothing presence, how do you do that? We can talk about that because that leads to the common emotional language. Because a soothing presence is, as a parent, let's say, and even as a partner, you have to be predictable. People have to be able to predict you're going to be there for them. I mean, not physically present, so you can attend to them. Emotionally present, okay, yourself. Because this makes it safe. This makes it safe for children or a partner to bring things up with you that are tough, or even things that are good. I mean, sometimes, but without that predictability is actually the basis of what we call trust. When we can predict somebody, we trust them. And for children, it's also the basis of security. They feel secure because they can predict their parents, when their parents are going to be there, how they're going to react to the things that they say to them. So this becomes really tough when you have high conflict parents, because a child doesn't feel safe in talking to either parent, because the parents are so invested in their own emotions, trying to take care of themselves, that they're not present for their children. So all of a sudden, I'm dealing with families under high stress, and that's what I specialize in, because that's where this whole thing breaks down. You see what I'm saying?
Amazing. This is really a whole lot of concepts to dive in here, and thank you so much for sharing. So what impact does high conflict parents such as divorce and constant tension have on a child emotional development?
Very severe. Don't put it first that way, but I'll tell you what happens. It depends on the age of the child. Okay. Young children, 3, very young children, they don't understand what's going on, but they feel the tension. I mean, children are exquisitely aware of how their parents feel. You can pick up an infant, and if you're tense, they're going to cry. I mean, it's just part of the way it is, you see? So you're not going to hide it. I mean, parents try to hide these types of things from the kid, that their kids know. Okay, they know. So when you're dealing with a 3-year-old, they feel the tension, and it makes, little children need their parents to be okay if they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they look to their parents to see, how do we react to things, And so your child will isolate themselves, try not to hear the yelling. And if they hear the yelling, when I talk to 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, they don't remember what's being said.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to, And so they isolate. And of course, it's unsafe for them to share whatever's going on with them, even their reaction to their parents fighting. When they get a little older, 7 to 10, they typically, if the parents are fighting like this, they typically take on a role to try to make their parents okay. The pleaser, they try to keep pleasing their parents, hoping that'll make them happy. The placater, they try to ease things between their parents, you see, and other roles, the negotiator, Problem here, and that's why it's so severe, is these are roles. It's not what the child's supposed to be doing. I call them not me situations. So the child doesn't develop themselves. They develop a role that they have to play. And how this affects children later on is when they meet people and have a relationship with themselves, they're used to playing these roles.
Yeah.
And they usually find somebody that fits with the role, but it's not really them. And people come to me, I'll give you even a specific case in a moment, but people come to me and say, Dr. Marcus, I feel empty. I feel sad and empty. A term called empty depression, but why do they feel empty? Because it's not really them. They're playing a role. I saw 2 children, 10 and 8. This was many years ago. And their parents were always fighting. They were divorced and didn't get along. And this boy took on the pleaser role, basically to try to protect his younger sister from all the yelling and everything like this. He came back to me 15 years later. He's now an adult, 25, 26 years old.
Yeah.
Successful, and a nice job, house, this type of thing. But he was feeling empty. He described to me this relationship he was having with this one woman who was a very high maintenance woman. He could never please her. Okay. What he did, it wasn't good enough. Well, I had the notes from when he was that, believe it or not. And I said to him, I read them over and I said, do you realize that you're still playing the role? He looked at me like, the role? Yeah, the role. The pleaser. Do you remember doing that with your parents? And his eyes went this big,
Oh,
You're right. I'm still doing the same thing. When people have chemistry with one another, That's hard to define. It's usually what we're used to. And this is what he was used to. So it felt comfortable for him to relate to somebody this way. But it wasn't healthful. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't good for him. Well, he got out of that relationship, found a very nice, soothing, kind woman. They got married and then now have a child. And, he's really happy now. And this is great. You know what I mean? But he had to realize that role was just in him. He didn't think about it. It was just the natural thing for him to do. But it wasn't him and it didn't make him happy. So there's an example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, amazing. This is really lovely, and thank you for what you're doing. Yeah, being that family is the basic growth of our society, and if we didn't get it right as parents, the children will not get it right, and it keeps cascading on and on and on, and lead to be a societal problem. Yeah, and I'm glad to tell you that. Yeah, thank you. So, in your experience, how can parents begin to rebuild trust and connection with their children after it has been
Develop
strained?
trust.
Yes,
Develop
after it
trust with
has
the
been
children.
strained. Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, trust is based on predictability.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like with my own son, when he was 5 years old, as a psychologist, I had evening hours and things like that. And I realized if I didn't have predictable time with my son, this wasn't going to work. So he had an interest and I had an interest in Taekwondo. And for 5 years, 3 times a week, we would take classes together in Taekwondo until he was 10. And I actually graduated him to black belt. It was kind of cool, And, and that was our bonding time. That and also predictable time in the evening when I would put him to bed. We talk, at that evening time. And I'd give him stories about my father who passed away early, so he'd get to know my father, things like that. But what parents need to do, they need to set up the soothing environment, which includes them being predictable, having predictable time with their children. And in our chaotic world, that's tough to do.
Yeah.
It is, but it's very necessary because children need to be attended to in order to develop an emotional language, in order to develop self-esteem, in order to become resilient. All these things that we talk about when we talk about children, they all require parents to be present and attending to what their children need emotionally. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this is important for people to understand because this happens a lot here. Well, I'm going to explain to you. I use the term attending to rather than attention. Maybe you noticed that because attention has a negative connotation, negative attention. Well, this is what I explain to parents. The difference is this. Children need to be attended to is a need, not just something that they want. They need it. And so I have to explain the difference between a need and a want because they get confused. You may want, let's say you want a new car, but I don't have the money right now, so I'll keep the old car for a while longer. That's something you want. Something you need are like basic needs.
Yeah.
Food.
What I
You see? Now, what happens to those needs if they're not met? If you didn't have air for 3 minutes or food for 2 days, or what happens? Do they go away until you can afford the next breath of air or the next meal? No, they don't. They intensify. In fact, they can intensify until all you can think about is getting that next breath of air or that next drink of water. The reason I use this analogy is because emotional needs work the same way. And if they're not met, they intensify. And what you see is children will do something more obvious, sometimes more obnoxious, something, they start acting out to get you to attend to them. All right. But the problem is when we think about attention, we think, they're just trying to get my attention. I don't want to reinforce this behavior, so I'm going to ignore it or punish them for it. You see, that's dead wrong. What can I tell you? Because all that's going to do is increase the need, and they'll find finally a way to get your attention. It might be something awful, they kick their dog or whatever it might be, and finally you pay attention to them. So what has the child learned? If I push the envelope hard enough, they'll finally pay attention to me. You see, it's a lose-lose situation, right? When my son was 3 years old, he began to do some stuff to get my attention. I turned to him and said, son, just say the word attention, and I'll attend to you.
Yeah.
And that's what he would do. It wasn't a big deal. You see what I mean? And I would, and I had predictable time with him, like I said. So this is important to understand. How do you attend to your child? How do you help them develop an emotional language?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, trust is based on predictability. Yeah, that was really amazing. And thank you for sharing. So how do you differentiate between discipline and punishment? And why is that distinction important?
Okay. In my book, ParentRx, I need to plug my book, of course.
Yeah.
ParentRx, Parent Prescription. It's coming out hopefully soon.
All right.
I have a chapter in there called The Art of Discipline. The Art of Discipline. And this is what I explain. I'll explain to your listening audience as well, of course. Firstly, there's a difference between punishment and discipline. People use those terms synonymously. They use them as the same, but they're not the same. Punishment is what I just described to you. Child does something wrong, you give a negative consequence, and the idea is they're going to learn their lesson not to do that again. Simple, right? Very logical, right? Yeah. And if that worked, people like myself would be unemployed because it would be so easy to be a parent. Yeah. You see what I mean? The assumption they're making is the lesson that they're trying to teach is the lesson that is learned. That's a big assumption to make. With a young child, they're not learning not to do it again. They're learning, my mom and dad are really mean to me. I hate them. Yeah. Within a teenager, it's, how dare you tell me what to do? I'm my own individual. You can't tell me what to do. And they'll find a way around it. I mean, this is what commonly becomes a power struggle between parents and their children. And take my word for it, as a parent and as a psychologist, you're going to lose that struggle. The parents are going to lose the struggle. Okay, you were grounded for 2 days, but you did it again. Now you're grounded for 6. Now you're just a bigger jerk to your kids. And none of this is helping them to learn anything or make them feel safe in order to tell you what's really going on. All you can do is keep reacting to their behavior, upping the circumstances and the consequences. And eventually you're going to lose all credibility. Try grounding a child for 30 days. Good luck with that. I mean, it's just not going to happen. You can't do it, So that's punishment, and that doesn't work. The word discipline actually comes from the same root word as the word disciple. Now, I'm not using any religious connotation here. It just means a student, right? A student. So the idea is to learn something, but what are you trying to teach? That's the difference. What does the child need to learn? Well, there are 2 primary reasons why children are acting out. Okay. We use terms like misbehave and acting up, but the term is acting out. They're acting out something. And what they're acting out is usually one of 2 things. One is obvious. They're acting out an intense emotion. And we see that, temper tantrum, anger, whatever it might be. The other one's more subtle, and I just explained it to you. They're acting out an emotional need that has become intense because it has not been met, like the need to be attended to, you see. So what you're trying to teach is a more socially appropriate way to express those intense emotions, or a more socially appropriate way to get their needs met. That's what you're really trying to teach. Consequences alone don't do that. All right. I'm going to go through this process now with you as far as how it's different than punishment, right? First of all, there are, discipline does begin with consequences. That's real life experience. You do something, there's consequences. But the consequences have to follow 3 criteria. First, they have to be immediate. You were bad 2 weeks ago, so you're grounded today. Doesn't work. It has to be short term. Like I said, you're grounded for a month. Well, good luck with that. You're just a bigger idiot than your child thought that you were before. And third, you try to make it relevant to what they did. If they make a mess, they clean up a mess. If they hit their brother, they do something nice. We don't always have direct relationships like that. So we have groundings and go to your room and sit on the step types of things, for young children. But okay, that's not that's not the teaching part. That's just the beginning. Now here's where it gets different. All right. Child's not going to like it. They're going to be up in their room, huffing and puffing, perhaps, you know what I'm saying, giving you an argument. You give them some time to calm down, and you give yourself some time to calm down, all right? Because you're doing this because they're aggravating you. They're doing something bad. And what I used to do is I just used to watch a video or something and just calm myself down for a few minutes, all right? And then my son would be upstairs in his room, I can tell he's not happy. And I go up to his room, go in there, give him a few minutes to calm down. And I say to him, son, Dad did something that really made it tough for you. What was that? Now, this is very different than what is typical, where Dad would go up to the room and say, this is why you're sitting here. This is what you did wrong. And this is, give him lecture number 4 on what he did wrong. Well, that's not going to teach him anything. This is an invitation. Dad did something that you didn't like. It's an invitation for him to start processing the experience. Yeah, Dad, I didn't like it. Well, tell me what happened. Well, this was going on, and I was playing my Nintendo, and my younger brother came and clicked the replay button. And I lost all I've been working on that level for half an hour, and I hit him, and then you came down and you sent me to my room, and that's not fair. And, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you mirror back as a soothing presence. This is what I'm hearing you say. It wasn't fair. This is what happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. What was it like when I did that? Oh, I really hated it, Dad. You really made me mad at you. How mad? Well, very mad. You're emptying him out, basically, of all these intense emotions. And at the end, you say, okay, I hear this.
Yeah.
And that's why you feel that. Am I getting it right? Well, now the child has been emptied out. He can now hear what you have to say. Before, he was just so filled up. He was focused on what he was feeling. So, all right, do I get it? Yeah, you get it. Well, here's the next. And I get very specific with the wording, by the way, based on how you saw it. No wonder you feel the way you do. You're validating their emotions, that they have a right to feel that way, but you're not saying that's it, because that's your perception. My perception is different. And you say, now, my perception is different. Now they're ready to hear it because you've heard them. All right. Well, it's my job as your parent to make sure that you and your brother are both safe. And when these kind of things happen, you're not safe. And I have to do something. I have to separate you and show you that this is not how we deal with things. Now, I don't blame you for the way you feel. But my guess is, son, that if it happens again the same way, I will have to give you more consequences again. So what can we do, me and you together, to make sure I don't have to do that again?
Yeah.
You come up with a resolution. Well, let's try that out. Okay, you'll have your own time and your brother will have his time on the Nintendo, whatever the solution is, let's try it out and see if that works. Now you're on his side. You're helping him to process the experience of his intense emotions, get beyond them, to think about what we can do together to make it better. A more socially appropriate way of expressing your anger at your brother. You see what I'm saying? This is discipline. The idea is, help the child to tolerate their experience emotionally and to figure out what to do about it. We have a very common word for that. You know what it's called? Wisdom.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
Yeah.
The child has gained wisdom. Been there, done that, know what to do the next time. Wisdom, you see? This process is also the basis of the child becoming resilient. That word is used so often, resilient, resilient children. What does that mean? It's a word, It has to have a process behind it so the child can become resilient. This is the process because they have been able to tolerate their experience and learn from them and know what to do the next time. The child is now resilient. They can handle stress. And guess what? They internalize that process as well as being a soothing presence, right? They take that in. And as an adults, we have another word for resilience. It's called stress tolerance.
Yeah.
So this is a very important part of maturation, if you think. Now, we skipped the part about developing an emotional language with your children because you wanted to talk about discipline. But the child has to have the language to be able to explain these things to the parent. And that starts even earlier. You know what I mean? So we're talking about a lifelong process here, if you think about it. It really, really is.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Mark. This has really been amazing, especially with the explanation. It makes it so graphical that I can see, trust is truly based on predictability and the fact that you're reaching out. Yeah, this is really amazing. So, Dr. Marco, from our audience, I would love to reach out, especially for more content for your upcoming book and the one you already have. And for coaching section, how can they reach out to you and where is the best platform?
Sure. I have a website they can go to. It's parentrx.org. PARENTRX, one word, .org. And they can see our podcasts and some other ones that I've done there, which I can, give explanations of these things, some more. They can also consult with me at my email address, which is DSMARCUSPhD, DSMarcusPhD at parentrx.org. They can get in touch with me that way too. And when the book comes out, I'm going to get in touch with everybody and let them know it's out. Maybe we'll talk again. But okay, because there's a lot more to the book than what we're talking about today. Thanks for having me.